Hi, I'm Brad Brummond, Walsh County Extension Agent. This is probably the second time in my 40 years as a career county agent that I've had to bow out on a presentation, but I guess I'm not bowing out. Let's talk a little bit about strip tillage and what we've done in Walsh County the past year. And I think a lot of you out there are considering strip tillage or have heard about strip tillage. Where does it fit? What does it cost? What's the advantage? What's the disadvantage? Those are some things I want to talk about. Most of my strip tillage experience is basically in the Red River Valley. We started strip tilling here about 3 or 4 years ago in eastern Walsh County. We have several fairly large sugar beet growers that are now strip tilling sugar beets. A lot of the stuff you're going to see today is going to come from our conservation sugar beet demonstration project, where we got quite a bit of money from General Mills to split an 80 and compare strip till and conventional till sugar beet practices through a 4-year rotation. Last year we were on our second year of our 4-year rotation, and we had sugar beets on that thing. So again, we've been doing this close to 5 years. Most of the adaptation again is in corn and edible beans. I've got a producer about 4 blocks south of my office that has actually been doing it probably the longest, and he does corn and edible beans on this strip till. And again, we're dabbling in sugar beets also. So let's talk about why we might want to consider strip tillage. You know, if you would have been driving home from Devil's Lake yesterday, even with all this snow, we did see quite a little blowing going on out there, even with all the snow we have. One of the things we've seen with our strip till, it does reduces the blowing. It saves fuel. It's not no-till, so it does warm your soil up in the spring. So if you're going to throw a strip till in with no-till on soil temperatures, I think you're making a mistake on that. It reduces soil compaction. Also, you're leaving residue on the ground for the bugs to feed on, so you're improving your soil health. It conserves moisture. I think one of the greatest advantages we had this summer on our strip tillage was on our split 80s was that the strip till had enough moisture to get out of the ground. The regular tillage, they had chunks of soil the size of tennis balls. They had no soil moisture. It was really a bad seed bed, and they put it in as deep as they dared put it in, and they still didn't get the emergence. So there are some really advantages from conserving moisture standpoint in dry years on strip tillage. The other thing is one of the greater weaknesses of strip tillage used to be that we had issues with fertilizer application. I think with our new strip tillage machines, I think a lot of that has gone away. So I think we can get our machines now set up to where we can put this fertilizer down where we need it to be. And the other thing is the argument that I often hear is that we're not going to do strip till because we can't afford the yield drag. We can't sacrifice any money in our economy. Yeah, and I get that. But you know what? We looked at our sugar beet, the strip split 80 we had on our beets last year. They were significantly higher. I can't share the total numbers because I haven't got permission to do that, but they were significantly higher on our strip till than on our 40-acre conventional till sugar beets. Also, when we looked at compared this one field when it was in spring wheat, and we saw almost no advantage or disadvantage the year we did our spring wheat on that same field. But we did pick up a pretty good bump off those our sugar beets this year. I know a lot of you don't raise sugar beets, but I'm just drawing some analogy from what we've seen, okay? Disadvantages. And you know what? I think the greatest disadvantages on our strip tillage is if you get extremely wet soils, it's really difficult. What I've been told by my strip till applicators It's difficult to get really good seed beds in wet soils. It tends to clump and roll. We haven't faced that the last year or so. The other thing is, I guess, if you're going to, we do a lot of our strip tillage in the fall, okay? And last fall, we didn't have any trouble with clumping and rolling, okay? It was pretty dry. So there's the advantage is most of the guys that set up their strip till acres do it in the fall. So we get away from some of those wet, cold soils that are going to clump and roll. To my knowledge, all our strip till was done last fall. Maybe there'll be some done this spring, but I really doubt it. I think they had plenty of time to do this. Carbon advantages. It also increases the carbon levels in your soils. So if you're looking at carbon contracts, there may be something here for you. It releases 82.6% less carbon dioxide than a moldboard plow. So it significantly holds things according to some of the data that I have read. I know most of us don't farm for carbon credits, but here's just some fun facts for you. Now let's talk about some of the equipment. Usually our strip tillage equipments are set on 2 row spacings, from what I see, 30 and 22 inch rows. And basically those are the rows. Reason they're set up on 30 and 22 inch rows. Some of the corn guys go with the 30 inch rows. The beet guys probably are going to narrow their rows down a little bit. But you have some options there. One of the things that I have also found is that we have several companies that make strip tillage machines, okay, and they'll sell them to you. And but we also have one strip tiller out here that actually bought a machine and bought a machine from Langdon and actually adapted it to strip tillage. So there's cheaper ways to do it. Some of the early strip tillers actually adapted their own machines. So if you're handy and you can look at some of these adapted machines, maybe you can make that work. But we have the Soil Warriors and some of the other strip tillage machines that you can just hook up and go. They're very good machines. Most of the manufacturers I've looked at, their machines do work. So those are your options. Horsepower requirement. Our horsepower requirement is anywhere from 12 to 30 horsepower per row. So it does draw some power. It'll make a big tractor snort if you've got a bunch of rows on it. I think if you're going to go strip till, you almost have to have a GPS system. I don't know how you put this in without a GPS system. So I think you need to have a good GPS system so you can be consistent on your row placings. And most of our units today are going to allow banning of phosphorus and potassium. And I think some of the new machines are really getting a lot better. With the total fertility package. For those of you who run these machines, you can tell me that most of the machines I've been around will ban these things. Nitrogen can also be applied without too much issues. But let's just put it this way: we're doing this stuff in the fall. We're doing our strip tillage in the fall. So if you're doing your strip tillage on sandy soils, maybe that's not something you want to do. Because we have a lot of Fordville sand south of Park River. It's I call it heavy sand. It's sand over gravel. We have some of the biggest gravel resources in the state of North Dakota, going up and down Highway 32. We could lose some nitrogen on these heavy sands, as I call them. So maybe that is something we may have to rethink. We may have to do some broadcasting or do other things between rows. But then again, you're going to lose some of your residue advantages when you do that. What did we learn, and what does the data say? Okay, this is what we learned and we've seen. Most of the data I've pulled is come from Minnesota, and basically this data talks about corn and soybeans. They saw no yield reduction strip tillage, and we didn't see any yield reduction in that year of the spring wheat. We actually saw a yield advantage with our sugar beets last year on this one field. And in Minnesota, they really haven't seen yield drags between the corn and the soybean strip tills. So just from what I've seen, what Minnesota data would say, it doesn't seem to be that that there's a disadvantage here. Now, what we saw with our sugar beets was the big advantage we had with our sugar beets was sugar beets need a long time to grow, and the longer they grow, the more sugar they accumulate, and we want our beets in the ground and we want them growing. What we saw with our beets compared to our conventional till last year was we saw some significant emergence issues with our conventional tillage beets that were put in dry ground. And I think we actually got a better stand later on the conventional till beets. But here's the deal: our beets were up and growing a couple, 2 or 3 weeks in front of the conventional till. So we had an advantage of 14 to 20 days on the growing season with our sugar beets. The other thing about that we saw with some of this strip till is we traditionally have a problem with our sugar beets blowing out of the ground and helicoptering. The strip tillage really gives these little beets a chance to grow, and without twisting out of the ground on some of these days. Most of you guys remember those, and ladies and gentlemen, you remember those days in late May and early June where all the real estate in Walsh County was moving, and our strip tillage field was not moving. So that's the testament to what it did in that field. Now here's a picture of our field here that we're going to be going into next year. This is set up for our strip tillage and beets. You'll notice the dark soil. That's where they've strip tilled. Then you'll notice in the middle, if you see this wheat, look at what we got going here. We've got a lot of residue. Do you think that's going to blow? Do you think our sugar beets are going to helicopter out next spring? I really doubt it. I haven't been out there recently, but I'm guessing we have a good layer of snow on top of those fields compared to the bare field. But one of the things we also found was sometimes we have trouble getting a seedbed that we like in one pass with some of these machines and when some of these conditions. Some of these fields had to do a double pass. At least that was the case with that sugar beet field we had last year. To my knowledge, this is one pass right here. But you'll notice it's not completely black, but here's what we've got set up. And if you notice over here on the right hand corner, there's this little tip up right here for ice fishing. We're not ice fishing. This is a wind collector and a soil collector. So what we're doing is we are measuring soil blowing and soil loss on these fields. So that's a soil collector in these fields. And if you look down these fields, this is a picture from last year's strip till. Look at how clean that is, how straight that is, how much cover you got going on there. It's a pretty nice deal. Now, if you look at this one's kind of sideways. I apologize for that when I set this together. You'll notice that the sugar beets are growing up and down, and you see the wheat stubble. They're really happy. They're growing up and down those rows, and I believe this was taken in early August or early to mid-August. They're just loving those rows, and the wheat isn't interfering with their crop. And like most of those stands, you'll say, well, Brad, you could have a little better stand there. Yeah, we could, but most of our sugar beet stands had some issues this spring, and that field really did pretty well. Now, if you look at this, now this was taken on it was a late pre-pile sugar beet thing, pre-pile harvest. And if you notice here, as you're taking these beets off, in a normal sugar beet situation, we have zero residue. It's all black. It's all pulverized. If you look at here, you can see the beets, the unharvested beets on the left with the strip till with the old wheat still in them, and you can see as we're taking them off, we still have catch rows left to cover those beets this winter. Okay, so How do we get into strip till? Most producers choose to try it on an 80 to 100 acre basis. And most of the producers that I've been working with that are just dipping their toes into the pond, I tell them, why don't you try it on 80 acres? Why don't you try it on 100 acres? It's really gets really expensive if you're going to take this thing across 100 acres or 1,000 acres. We have a couple of operations in Walsh County that do custom strip tillage, and they were busier than pocket gophers last year. They did a lot of custom work. And we have 4 operations that have purchased the strip till drill, and I believe we have 1 operation that has modified a drill. So they're going quite heavily. We have one fairly large operation that pretty much strip tills all their beets. We got a second large operation that's going that way because they've seen some of the advantages. What's the trend? Okay, we're expecting to increase our strip tillage sugar beet acres in Walsh County 800 to 900%. Now I say, whoa, that's a pretty big number. Okay, well, we started out with a fairly low number, so it's not as big as you would think. But still, it's really catching fire up here, and the sugar beet growers are starting to look. Strip till handled the dry weather better, according to the producers who did it in 2021. It greatly increased our strip tillage in 2022, and we plan on having a county soil health tour in the middle of July in 2022. I invite you to come down and walk in the fields and see if Brad is telling you the truth, okay? Some of the biggest things that I've often said is, show it to me, don't tell me, show it to me. So come out, we'll show it to you, okay? And you can talk to the growers, you can talk to me, and you can pick apart what we're doing. I don't care, but we're gonna show it. Big companies are really screaming for regenerative agriculture practices to be used on the land their products are growing on. Again, we got a fairly large financial support from General Mills to do this. They want to see regenerative agriculture practices on their fields. And you know, when we did that, our soil health tour in the middle of July, we had some major companies that were sitting on those lawn chairs outside in front of the extension office, and they went on the bus and they looked. They are really getting pressure from their consumers to say, so why should we buy your sugar instead of cane sugar or other things? So we have people that are big companies that are really interested in this, and I think this is going to continue. Whether you like it or not, I believe this is a trend. We can sit back here and say all we want, but if the consumer doesn't buy the sugar, then we don't have a market. So we're headed that way, ladies and gentlemen. We're headed that way. I believe that firmly. Walsh County soil health demonstration. I talked a little bit about that. This product was again funded by General Mills. It was a four-year no-till, strip-till, and cover crops and rotations. In order to participate, we have 4 growers participating in this. In order to do this, you have to split an 80. You have to do conservation practices on one side, and you have to do, and you can farm the other. We want you to farm the other side the way you used to farm it. So, but we do demand that we're looking for no-till in our spring wheat. We're looking for cover crops on the off years with some of our edible beans. One of the things that always occurs in these rotations is generally we have spring wheat and edible beans in these rotations somewhere. Corn and soybeans could also work in these rotations. But we have our soil health committee that kind of looks at things and gives them a thumbs up or thumbs down on what they can do. And you know what? We're pretty flexible. If you can tell us why you need to do something, do it. You know, we're allowing our sugar beet growers to go in this spring and level off some of the ridges on those sugar beets. As long as we can keep our soil covered during the winter, we're trying to work with our producers, okay? And this is NDSU Extension justice for all. We do not discriminate against anybody.